Oh, isn't that so amazing? I think it's really important, actually, that people really could imagine that everybody is their baby, and that we can have the courage to be able to adjust the things, which is more to make things more social where we are. You've got people who are not saying anything, of course, and they're what's the word, Cam? They're enabling. And then you've got people who can see that something's going on, because people don't really say anything. And then you've got people who really want to compensate for that. And then you've got people who are over, talking, and they're talking because they've got something going on deep inside of the story. And then the person who's not talking, that's their form of communication. And they can be very similar to each other, Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that eye awareness really is equivalent to truth possibility for one to really be free within themselves. And a person should do what they can to have everything more be about their own personal development within themselves, to be eye aware. And as they are eye aware, then one is loving. And until such a time as they should really be doing everything they can to be open and everything, But it's a big old fall if persons just thought that they were separate and things, and then all sorts of thinking can have created that in the past, But eye equivalence really is eye awareness is equivalent to freedom from conformity and freedom from conditions and tradition and things put on you, that you've developed this voice inside you, see? And then eye awareness really is equivalent to having no pattern necessary of any predictable routine either, you see? Because if you've got a predictable routine, something stuck has existed, So if a person always is talking flat, strap, and very high, and they're in a very visual mode, and they're always causing people to other than remain more in their beingness in themselves. And it's like the children are really playing beautifully, and they're playing train. And then an adult comes along and reminds them that it's a cardboard box. I mean, they've broken the trance, you see, and things. But our beautiful state of being really is more inside ourselves in our playfulness. But why do we have to be continuously focused to have to survive, you see? But that's an eugenic sort of a program being run, where any fear sort of could be instilled sort of thing. It could have created for the unsuspected blood other than to remain really nicely, you know what I mean, in your brain. And to blood to remain very nicely, perfectly as you're grounded nicely, in your body. And why not just sort of relax your shoulders a little more? You know what I mean? You can't tell me you can't relax your shoulders a little more. I mean, geez. People's stomachs have to be relaxed more, Most people are really unaware of that sort of stuff. But this is the sort of thing which the native would really care very much for the professor in you, the disembodied, heady, didactic professor in you, to be aware that there could be something else going on. And if your experience, and you experience your experience, and when you die, what happens to that? Oh, how lovely was that? That was the biggest illusion you could ever imagine, fully. And then people were just all about their experience, this experience, that experience, and that just really isn't anything. But how many people really have been on a team? But if you have kinship remained, you've been been on a team and you've had a team and you've got some 35 people around you or something more, and you're really on a team and the people are working on a team, you see, because this is really a family dynamic, and then you get to see the things going on. But if you, what is it called when a nuclear explosion happens above ground somewhere? What's that called? Do you know?
Nope.
It's called ground zero. Yeah. And, you know, if you're in a world where a count can easily play the black hats off against the white hats, you know, and the black hats against the white hats, and then people can really be trained to fight the black hats and the white hats, and you know, and then all the discussion can be just so far downstream down there. It's called the bottom of the cocky's cage. It's really a level of groveledness. Could we say that? Yes. It's sort of like a decidedness. You know what? Intellect won't work, of course. Goodwill won't work, apparently. But how could goodwill work if you've got a goat jumping on top of another goat? Do you know what I mean? I mean, how can a system work where if there's only just 5 countries really not part of the plantation, you know, and then, of course, Russia and China and America and Europe and Australia and Canada and most all the countries sort of are part of the plantation, you see. But there's only maybe 5 countries left that's really not part of the plantation. Of course, Syria is part of that. Jordan certainly is, you know. Iran certainly is, you know. And then, of course, Cuba and North Korea sort of, that's sort of not part of the banking club, I guess, or something, really, you know. But everything else is sort of really just only one plantation, not really 2 or 3. But people are really led to believe that they're in, you know, a separate sort of plantation somewhere with its own name and things, you know. And then they can, the same corporation really is there, but it just sort of really is an election of the officers for the term, you know. But the corporation remains the same, run by the same people, and that's the hand above the government. And then cognitive dissonance sort of allowing that, because you could really have a moratorium just to own the growth of the money supply, everybody equally, as they should, because that's new money. If you knew how a brand new $100 bill is created. But who owns the growth of a new $100 bill? You know, and if it's flowing as it should, as it has in the past, 9 times in the history of America, things really work good. And certainly in England, for 900 years, things work pretty good. But the moment in 1791 that the Bank of England got owned by Patterson and King William of Orange, and it got taken away from the Fogg family, you know, the eye awareness and the Church of David sort of really became ever more corrupted, because a system of usury came to be, you see. And that snuck in and created a slave as an octopus to create all the wars. And there's a reason why that's the biggest sin that's occurring on the earth. And when people participate in language, it's at the bottom of the cocky's cage. It's sort of like when people finally have to hit each other or something, which boys are trained to do. It's a level of groveledness, you see, because you say, oh, well, we'll bugger intellect, you know what I mean? We're just going to go with brute force, you know. But thinking chatter to invent and to hide a lot of stupidity, and inventing a chatter to just to hide stupidity, that's a signature of itself, you know. Yeah. Anyway, there's a few things sort of happening in the world, isn't there? But you can really have created apathy and know how to sort of have worked that. But that, as you could see this, as I see it, you really can escape from that. Because why should you, other than care, to actually have the patterns that really is about a functional body. And if you're a functional body, then you're in your beingness for the service of another where you are in the moment. And if you're not, well, then you're not. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of things that take a person out, books, magazines, the internet and things, computers, handheld phones, games. Adults in the past really were concerned that children were spending more and 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 more until death. Time in front of the computers or little gadgets. And they were not taking any time to be with each other at all. They were in their heads. And that started to be okay because they had, the Handlebar government, sort of as a plantation owner, really had to create a nuclear family because you destroy ethnia as quick as you can by only having a nuclear family, And then it's acceptable apparently for the father not for the mother not for the father, and everybody's agreeable. That's all good, and nobody makes any really effort to adjust anything, and they'll be willing to be suffered unbelievably that people around them would be having behaviours and things which is causing others to have felt other than nicely remain perfectly in your balance. So why not remain perfectly in your balance and to be observed to see the things? And why don't you polarise just a little bit with behaviours which are you should polarize with a little bit, because how will anybody ever be able to feel what the effect of something is if you don't do that back just a bit or something, you know what I mean? But anyway, whistleblowers, of course, like Julian Assange, the whole world knows that he certainly, and WikiLeaks has provided the world with an enormous amount of information that's about official misconduct. And now, I don't think you can just all of a sudden just change people's attitude about that, The vast majority of people I talk with all over the world do see WikiLeaks as a whistleblowing agency, and the things that WikiLeaks has given everybody really is more about official misconduct. You know what I mean? And how could they ever rule out the fact that he's not being retaliated against? I mean, that's the talk everywhere, that this is retaliation. And that, isn't that what's going on? Protected disclosures and protected conduct isn't to be protected, apparently. And that everybody agrees that officials should just be allowed to run wild. I mean, people could just divert all the water up in the sky and heat it unusually, you know what I mean? And artificially and synthetically, and just spray plastic everywhere, But that person doesn't care about all the plastic. Why would they create money to clean up the plastic? That's not going to be an asset to them, apparently. And then how's it an asset to any of us? Because everybody else is sort of in cognitive dissonance where they are. You know what I mean? And people allow behaviour in their family, but you wouldn't allow that in a professional environment. You wouldn't allow that in a professional environment. Why are you not shaping the things that need to be so you are in a professional environment? I think if it's okay for you to be doing this in your professional environment, why are you not doing this in your home? You're so ingratiated in, human development and people being in their totality and trainings in human development and all of this sort of thing. But you're just allowing people to have behaviours and things which is perfectly designed to have taken people, allowed people to remain in their balance, and that's just called harvesting, this behaviour harvesting energy. and then the vast majority of people are just sort of participated in that. But what I'm sharing with you is something which perhaps could you become a little bit more aware as a result of our conversation today. Is it possible to be able to be aware that a hand above the government really is just playing the black hats up against the white hats, and everybody's conversation at that level is just at the bottom of the cockie's cage? Could a roof really be leaking and all the black hat against the white hat conversation, wherever it is, it certainly is not about your baby. It's about, oh, wait a minute, you've forgotten this is your baby. Isn't that person behind this? What about Julian Assange? Isn't he someone's baby? And isn't not the people that he's protecting by having given forward these protected disclosures and conduct, has that not been about official misconduct? How do you get out of people's head that this is an official misconduct? Enormous amount of material has been released, and most all of it is official misconduct. And it's not an equal or egalitarian hand. And so, look, most everybody does know that, and I don't know that anybody in Guantanamo that was ever collected or anything was treated humanely, and the vast majority of people apparently were really innocent, and certainly their stories, David Hicks, and in that situation down there in Guantanamo, he was an Australian boy, and he is innocent, and his body was just destroyed in his life. He certainly was innocent, and then word has it, of course, that the vast majority of people that he saw were extremely sort of zombified. It was like they were not even connecting with him, that he had any family, or even that he even feelings towards him. So is it possible just to get rid of all the whistleblowers like at Abu Ghraib, but not have any whistleblowers there because you've had your drama, because you had your experience at Abu Ghraib? I think that synthetics, everybody does know. What would be the reason why you would want to make a synthetic from horse's urine? I mean, it's weird. And now, of course, Premarin users, made a lot of money. But isn't there a face validity in taking something synthetic? Isn't that a poison? And isn't there a reason why that must be administered? Because it's a toxic poison. And can't be just freely given, apparently. But then it's given to someone, and apparently you're supposed to have informed consent. But did you really have informed consent? You were informed? You were informed that today the statistic is 1.3 higher risk of heart disease just because of Premarin, 1.2 higher risk of stroke, 1.8 higher risk of gallbladder condition just because you took a synthetic horse's urine? But why would you want to take a synthetic anyway? I don't think that really taking something natural really necessarily might harm properly in the same way that something certainly synthetic does. But is it acceptable that your son would be not allowed to be with his father? No. Is that acceptable? And that's all right for you, is it? Is it all right that Bradley Manning is woken up every hour for 1,000 days or more? He's been captive, his body, in Pry Son. Why don't they call that Pry Daughter? If somebody lives the longest life, isn't that equivalent to power? If someone lives the shortest life, isn't that equivalent to powerlessness? Well, research shows this. So who's living the longest life? Tell me. And who's living the shortest life? Tell me, come on. Isn't it obvious to you? Come on. Who lives the longest life now? Come on. And who lives the shortest life? Well, if you ask everybody all over the world, and they've been surveyed, what power equivalent to, everybody's recognized love. Love is equivalent to power. And if you're doing loveless work, that is not power. Sorry, it's not. Powerlessness. But you could be tricked to think, oh yeah, trained to fight, just like Pavlov's dog. Salivate at the bell. You know what I mean? But could you have a little bit more deeper insight from our listening in today? Would it be worthwhile to listen in again? I don't think I'm going to go over it again. Generally, every show is unique of itself. Do you know what I mean? So, why not think this is the university where you voted with your feet? Do you think it's an accident? You know? I mean, you're listening, and I feel like you are amazingly intelligent inside. And this, which is finest of its kind on the outside, is just touching this very deep wisdom you have inside yourself. You're in agreement with things, you know what I mean? But could you create apathy if you have a game where you play Smash Face and you have the Vestal Virgins all sort of cheering on, you know, and seeing 2 million United States of America boys have head injury every year? Is that all right? A lot of these kids are, quite young, but practicing already to be super man. Super man. Got to leap across tall buildings. Oh, yeah. And you're going to be educated by womanhood, and there won't be any family sort of in there, or if it is, it's sort of extremely dysfunctional, you know what I mean? But why don't we care for whistleblowers? And anyway, everybody knows that I've listened to WikiLeaks is a whistleblowing agency, and everybody knows that there's a phantom about the reason, and it actually is a pretextual theme that's just pumped up, and they want evidence to be exfoliated. See? But Julian has the ability to privately contract, and that certainly is not allowing him to contract, is it? I don't know. But no victims there, no injury, but being held, no one could say he's not being injured, isn't he? Well, does he have a family? Would he care to be able to be travelled? And what would happen to you? I bet everyone would be just allowing to go about your la-di-da, and have your cliffhanger or whatever. But, it's a bit silly. Look, everybody is aware that he's participated in protected disclosures and protected disclosure and conduct, and the vast majority of people see that his concern is that this is seen as retaliation, and he is being retaliated against. And, he should be let go, because the polarizedness of what they're doing to cause ever more and more and more and more energy mounting, and the cost of that is radical. So I guess they're doing everything they can successfully to help him achieve what's needed to be, that information comes to be a little bit more. Do you know what I mean? And so the 2 million United States head injuries, of course, that could be occurring to boys, and that could be, they have a greater 10 times more incident of Alzheimer's disease and that sort of thing, But if you marginalize people, you could reduce the risk effects and all sorts of things, apparently, of having things be changed, but that's not occurring. Things are going full steam to be changed because I know that's a good thing because the more and more evidence is coming, mounting that this is retaliation. Actually, you see, and retaliation is the reason for him being held. But if a whistleblower is not allowed to stop and reduce all the risk effects and dangers and things, isn't it just a cloud and smoke screen by a cabal to manipulate and marginalise and pry sun and sold your food that's very high in phosphate, and people not being told about high homocysteine and the effects that can have on their health, and then feeding them extremely high phosphate, high homocysteine foods. Why don't you just look it up? Go ahead. I mean, look up high phosphate food, phosphate to calcium to phosphate ratio. Tune into some of our programs. Look up homocysteine. That's a very good one. And methionine excess, which is there in the flesh, and all the acid. But pelvic inflammatory disorders, prostate and ovarian and reproductive conditions and things, and all the blocking of hormones and things, by estrogenic sort of compounds and excess in the canned foods and the packet food and things, that does cause lower and lower and lower sort of hormone and less than proper levels of thinkingness and more zombifiedness. So that's certainly not a protectedness. No, it certainly isn't. But it's not acceptable, is it, Lukey, that out of 400,000 U.S. boys killed that looked at, 80,000 of those, it's estimated, that's 20% were killed actually by friendly fire and things. A friendly fire, is it really acceptable? I mean, if you don't have whistleblowers that can actually really, as stunt people, and a stunt person cannot tell everybody how that's supposed to be done for their own safety. I mean, all sorts of accidents and everything can occur as that, But if you're a whistleblower, as I am and have been and participating in protected disclosures and conduct, and then all the person has to do to show their signature is to have called you a kook or to have acted that you're not participating in protected disclosure and conduct, which everybody knows you are, and that person leaves their signature behind and whoever that's connected to. But New York Post and articles and things such are really fabricated lies that are just gotten away with thoroughly. And everybody knows that, and there's a blackout in the media and the 4 major networks, and then it's not. And then that's the reason why Alex Jones has taken more and more and more of the media viewing and enormously of the net and things. You see, but you've got 1.1 trillion cells. You've got a neuron that can fire 5 to 50 times per second. Reflexes can be sharp or they can be slowed. You could be either sharp in your being where you are because you've got good patterns of created family connectedness and your ethne and where you are, or you're dysfunctional, you're walking around like a zombie, you're just tuning into something, you're not connected to everything, you've thought your experience is everything, well, it's not, it's a serious illusion, you're just going to die and you've honored your whole experience, but you never actually connected to create family or team, and you really did not function to see that everybody was working together. You were just oblivious and allowed people just to snowball and run over everybody. But people really are important. And a geographical spot is jack nothing unless you have people. Do you know what I mean? But you have to have really good, nice environment, and things have to be sweet. But if you've allowed people to make big, quick, loud, fast noises to continuously, non-stop, everybody knows that's not right. That's not peace. And then everybody's starting to have even sound and noise reduction laws and things, to help people and that sort of thing. But happier people, they live longer, they have larger brains, they have larger septal regions, They've come from mum and dad, and they're born, and they're come into a family of lovingness and happiness. They are born with larger septal regions. Otherwise, they could have much smaller amygdalas. And we've been talking in the show, in the past shows, all about the hand above the government and that the creating of prostitute training and things, and that negative sort of thing, people will avoid. They'll do double, to avoid what they would do equivalently to have an equivalent gain. How's that? So it's pretty amazing. We should really do what we can to have Velcro for the things that really stick and work nice and good and it's smooth, and have Velcro for these things and let others have Velcro for that too, this. And then and Teflon, got to have a Teflon, just for everything that's silly, just slip right off. You say, whoa, wait a minute, need a little bit more Teflon, things slip off you. Got to waterproof you, and you need a bit of Teflon, you know what I mean? Compliment, you've got to be felt of your own compliment and be in your own beingness. People shouldn't have to compliment you. Can you hear me, Ricky?
Loud and clear, Doc.
Yeah. Nothing is really causing anything, though. All is the essence, of I being self-existent inside you as I. Everything is really part of a whole, and you're not an individual at all. As you have this I inside you, you really go beyond just an individual consciousness over there, and you can become more joined to more of a multiple consciousness and be part of something which actually really, you're a cog in a wheel where you work, rather than being dissociated to be continuously doing something every day for a check that would be drawn in the bank of heaven. And when you're asked about it, it is something, is not for the moment at all, really. You're not in service. You're servicing your own experience for a future something, and you're willing to allow everybody to be supportive of you whilst you do that. It's like, wow. Nothing really is causing anything, all right? We need to have a program about this of itself, but all really is the essence of I being self-existent. And as I aware, everything really is part of the whole, and there really is no individual or separate self, you see. But if you've been created whole and in your totality, can we reach this if you're other than aware of the body that we all share, and you can just be doing something but take your hand off the plow and put your hand somewhere else? You cannot be here and have one hand on the plow here, right, and have one hand somewhere else. That's so funny if you think you can. I'm sorry, but you can't. And the elders in the Native American tradition are just so bored. And why would they want to have a conversation with anybody with a foot in the grave? It's better to have a conversation with people who have 2 feet here and you've got both hands on the plow. You have to have both hands on the plow. It'll be quick, recognized, fast. All right? You've got unique linguistics reflecting the origin of culture and our beingness in ourselves as a voice. This is about your voice inside, not mine. No? It's not about me, mine. This is your voice, which is most powerful. And this is to come from inside you, not anything imparted. How weak is that if it were just imparted? That's useless. I don't want that. I want your voice. You can see things are a bit chaotic. Nobody's in charge. Take charge. All right? I'm asking you to take charge. And your instructions should be more in an auditory, kinesthetic voice. Not a fast, quick voice. You're gonna just take in everybody out of their body. You give instruction more in your auditory and your kinesthetic voice and things. And this is more circular dynamic, not linear, not in your head with a line like you've got a telephone in front of you or a little game you play continuously. And it's like you're just looking at your fingernails. You've reduced yourself to be in a jail perpetually. And a little bit of that is okay, you know. But what if you're looking at your nails all the time, perpetually? You're just looking at your nails, flicking something in front of people when they eat. How can anybody eat if you're just continuously twitching? Why don't you notice how much you twitch? Why can't you slow that down a bit? Relax. Why are you not doing a 30-70 where 30% is asking questions and you're getting 70% back? This is what the medicine person does, all right, not another way round. And they do a 20-80 rule. They use 20% of the time and take the vast majority of people that are ditherers taking 100% of the time, and they get 80% of it right. And this is what successful people really do. But are you in a position where you're really open, you know, to take in information? And is this valuable to you? And do you seek out things which is valuable, that you consider things more rational, logical? You care about logic a bit, you know, but you also care about communication in your nonverbal. Your nonverbal, your analogicalness. That's very important, you know, extremely. We don't live in a linear dynamic, but in a more circular. Eye awareness really is more circular dynamics, summoning alike energy back, and same uniqueness. And creation is not at any standstill state at all, because that sameness, beautiful uniqueness, and that you have a great help. We can draw this out, and our family has a strength that's fault. But as creation really is not at any standstill, you and I really put out what is summons back, and this is the communication, because communication is the response that you get back. This is cyclotronic, and that's not just in a straight line. This is like you're looking within each other, and this is more circular, not all praying in one direction outside yourself. This is a very unique form of linguistics that you have a shape where things can be done, and your church could have been just straight with everybody looking in one direction, and, you know, that's just to create that limitedness. But if you only ever listen to music and it's 440, wow, you've only ever had 440, not necessarily 12 overtones in your body, and you've been content with that? If the vast majority of music you're listening to is 440, and it's dulled. It's dulled. Check it out. Check it out. The moment you check it out, you don't want to listen to any of that music anymore, because it's full of stuff which has been, you know, it's just the travesty of the stock. And you've got, you know, the plantation owner has stock in America, and it's got stock in India, and it's got, you know, stock in Australia, and it's got stock in, you know, South America, and it's got stock in China, and it's got stock in Russia, and these are the stock. And it's the travesty of the stock that runs the show and Reuters, and everybody gets their information, and, you know, it's just part of everything is something, you know. But, you know, things that people could have been, got a bit of a stickiness of chewing gum on the slide, you know, in the play slide. And then when you slid down, it went, you know, and you got stuck a bit there, and you think, geez, what's that? You know, and that's called the second trigger, you know. Well, that's your response. How you respond, you know, and that's called the second trigger, you know. Well, that's your response. How you respond, you know, and that's called the second trigger, you know. Well, that's your response. How you respond, you know, and that's